Hello! Welcome in, everybody. My name is Diomedes of Diomedes Industries, and today we are going to be building a dice tray. A dice tray slash valet tray, whatever you want to call it, but that's what we'll be building today. I've got an example of one here. This is one that I keep in stock, DiomedesIndustries.com. But you can make this whatever style you want. This one has gone through some airbrushing. I've got black, brown, saddle tan, and then just regular tan leather on the inside, and then black on the back. This has been stitched with 138 thread, black, with black buttons. Let me show you what that looks like. So you can carry it flat. If you're using this as a dice tray, you can carry it wherever you want to, flat, and then when you get there, you can fold it up. This also works for travel. If you like to have a central location to keep your keys and your, cards and all that stuff when you're traveling, this will work for you in that situation. So it snaps together, goes together quickly, and then comes apart quickly. This one's brand new, so there's a little bit of break, and they want to pop their snaps for just a little while. But what you can do is fold it over on the lines here, and then you end up with a dice tray that works like this. So again, it works as a valet tray. You can keep your keys in there, and your wallet, and whatever else you want, or it works as a transportable dice tray. So here we've got a collection by Sirocco Creations. Way too many dice than you would need probably for any single roll, but let's imagine that you just wanted to roll a d20. So you've got these here, and you can roll. Look at that. Look at this, kids. Bam. Nat 20 off the first roll means it's going to be a good one. So let's get this thing started. This is our dice tray, and this is what we're going to make today. So pay attention, and I will show you how to do this from start to finish, and then you can make yours as well. What you should have gotten by now, what you should have done, is downloaded a pattern pack off of my website or off of some other website. This is a draft, and so there's going to be a few changes. It's going to look a little bit different when you get it, but I can show you how to build it now from beginning to end, and you can then build your own as well. The things that you're going to need to start this for leather is you're going to need a few pieces of 3 to 4 ounce leather. I have 2 pieces here that are just bigger than the dice tray itself, which is 8.5 by 8.5. Okay. Those 2 here, nothing cut out yet, nothing done. I'll show you how to do that. And then an option with this dice tray is for you to print it out and make a center piece, sort of an outlay, sort of a bottom, a base for this that looks really cool. So you can imagine then that we've got this piece here, and it lays in the bottom and is stitched, and then leaves sort of 3 layers. Now you don't need this as thick. This is 4 ounce. You could do 2 ounce, 3 ounce, things like that, and you'd be all set. Let me change my music up here, and let's get going. Let's do this. Let's do this. So you've got the pattern pack downloaded. Now yours is going to come with some registration lines. So all I've done here is printed off both, matched up the lines. It should be A to A, B to B, C to C. This should only have A to A, however, on it. Line those up together, cut them out, and then tape them together, and you're going to be good to go. I left one cut here, so all you have to do is take a very sharp knife. I'm just going to use this is a Kiwi. You can use any form of X-Acto knife and get this cut out. So grab a ruler. I recommend a cork-backed ruler for this so it stays put. make yourself a quick line there, and you then, once you've cut out all 4, you can set everything else aside, excluding the instructions, unless you've got this video playing right now while you're building it, and then you should be able to build yours along with it. So, you've got this cut out. Now, what you're going to see here are the locations for all 8 snaps, okay? So when you're laying out your leather, let's take the top here, what will eventually be the top, and I rolled that out just so that it would lay flat. We'll put a little bit of a weight on it, or in this case, 5 freaking pounds, 5-pound weight, and then we're going to make some marks here to cut this out, okay? So I just mark the corners because I'm going to be lining this up with a ruler. Don't let this pattern move, however, or you will be sad later. You will be sad later. Once that is done, you only need to mark those 4 corners. It's a fairly simple pattern. Then you're going to mark the snap locations with a scratch awl. Now you could just mark these corners with a scratch awl too. I just wanted you to be able to see them. So then we're going to mark the centers carefully with a scratch awl. This is why we cut the little piece of leather slightly larger than what we needed. There's a couple of reasons for this. When you try to cut it off of a whole big piece of leather, I tend to make more mistakes than if I've got just a small piece that I can cut this from. Okay? Now, another thing you could do at this time is mark this inner location for what I was telling you was this bottom, if you wanted to do that, okay? I'm going to show you why that's not necessary to mark it through the paper, because you might make some mistakes. So let me show you how to do this. I think that'll be a little bit easier. Now, when we cut this out, get this all cut out, we're going to leave the back piece that we've got here too big. Don't cut this to size. It's really hard to line up when you're going to glue this up, okay? So, don't cut it to size. Leave it oversized, maybe 1/2 inch around the borders. And then you will be all set once we glue this up, okay? I stream on Twitch as well. You can look up Diomedes Industries on Twitch. I'm recording this live on Twitch right now. I have the chat blocked so that you guys don't see it. So I apologize to anybody that's watching, but for these recordings, I'm just going to leave chat off. My chat is a ton of fun, but recording everything they say for posterity's sake is probably not the best idea. So you can come join us. Always ask questions over there. If you have any questions about this pattern pack down the road, please email me at diomedesindustries@gmail.com, and I'll get right back to you. Be able to answer it. If you catch me live on stream, just ask me there, and that's just as easy. Okay, so we used our sharp knife. I tend to use a head knife, but that time we used a X-Acto style knife. Now, actually, I'm going to make one small cut. I see that that's just slightly off over here, and it's bothering me. Probably isn't a big deal, but if I can see it, the customer might be able to see it. And so, can't believe I rolled a 20. Those are brand new dice from Sirocco Creations. I'll put a link to them down below when I upload this video. Get a drink here. Cheers to everybody. All right, so the outer cuts are done. Now, the reason I said don't worry about making that inner line, this inner line here, is because what we can do is grab a wing divider and set it to this inner line the way we want it, okay? This inner line the way we want it. then we need to set our pattern aside. And because we know that our lines are straight, because we just cut them, we then know that this line that we're just getting ready to make is going to be straight. Now, I advise doing this line whether you're sewing the bottom on or not, okay? And the reason for that is, I'm being sort of gentle on this first run. The reason for that is, that is where the dice tray will end up folding. It folds along those lines and makes a very nice, neat fold when you want to use this down the road. It also allows the customer to sort of break theirs in. You can see that this 2 4-ounces, 8-ounce leather is going to last forever, just by how stiff it is up front. You can always soften it if you chose to. I don't, because I want it to just break in naturally. So you guys probably can't see those. I set them pretty light, but we've got our lines to start with, okay? We've set up our start lines. Now, if you were going to build the bob, and I won't show this whole thing, I want this video to be relatively truncated, you would then glue in this bottom piece and stitch it all the way around, okay? I'm not going to show that part because I think you know how to do that, but let me show you what goes on for the rest of these parts here. So a couple of things. We've got our bottom cut out. Now what I'm going to do quickly, and there's going to be a reason for this as well, is I'm going to grab my 1/8 inch punch here. I like to make a mark first to make sure I'm centered on the holes that we made before. Okay? So I'm going to make these 8 holes quite quickly. Okay? I like to make sure that that's perfectly centered so that I know what's going on. We're making these 1/8 inch holes all the way around. All the way around. Now the reason I punch those holes first is because I'm about to do something else next that I need to make sense in the sort of order that we're doing it. What I'm going to do is grab a misting bottle and mist along the bottom of this really quickly. Now what that does is soften up the leather a little bit temporarily until it dries. That allows me to take my my wing dividers again and make these lines a little more defined. Okay? I'm still not going too crazy, but now you can see them a lot more clearly. Okay? You can see them a lot more clearly. Now, what I'm going to do, if I can find the right ruler. Where did I put that? Ah, put it over here. Is grab the ruler here and my scratch awl again, and I'm going to make these quite deep. Again, I don't want to pierce the leather. I don't want to go crazy, but I want to make a definite line so that later, when you go to bend this, it knows where to bend. Okay? It knows where to bend. So we've gone all the way around now. Now that's all set. This whole top is almost done, oddly enough. It's a quick project when you have everything sort of set up. The next thing that I would do, were it me, and I were building one of these, I would set in my maker's mark. Now, if you're a hobbyist, you don't have a maker's mark, and that's okay. But you can get, a letter stamp, you can do stamping, you can do a million things in the bottom of this or on the outsides. I will warn you, though, the more sort of varied you make this bottom with stamping, the more, if you're using it as a dice tray, the more the dice don't want to settle down. Okay? If you're using a D20, let's say, and I'm trying to grab a D20 out of here, or something that's smaller, now here's a D12, it will maybe rock and sit on some of those lines. Now, if you're making this as a valet, you don't care how your keys sit in there. So it's going to be just fine. Don't worry about that. But you can do along this bottom whatever you want. The one that I showed you is all I really did to it is airbrush it. Okay? All the way around. Variable die. And you'll see some other ideas as we're going along. This one, when I get it completed, will have this base in it that is just sort of a two-tone. Alright? Just sort of a two-tone, and it sits in there, and I hope that looks cool. And then I'll do this color on the back side when it's done. Now, what we're going to do next with this is going to set our snaps. But before we do that, what I wanted to show you from here in the rest of the video is how I do my edges all the way around here, because I'm going to skip a lot of the edging and sort of really boring stuff to just make this video truncated again. Okay? So, what I do is I've cut my square out, right? I've set my maker's mark in it. I even put a little stitch line in here to make sure that I knew where that was going to go. And then I edged 3 sides. I didn't edge all 4 of them. What you can do, and I've just got a little refillable marker here. You don't need this. What you can do is just grab a little bit of water, optimally a little bit of water and saddle soap. If you don't have saddle soap, get clear and fragrance-free glycerin soap. Okay? Put that along the edge. That softens the edge up, and it's going to prepare it for the edging tool that we're about to use. But also, it's going to prepare it for putting a slicked edge on this. Okay? There's a million different ways of doing that. I'll show you how I do mine. At least I do it with hand tools. Okay? Using an edger here, you can, this is a number 1. We're going to use number 1s on single thicknesses of leather and a number 2 when we do the out exterior edges. Okay? So, we now have this, our edge slicked, and that we've given excuse me, a little bit of time for that to soak in. Now we're going to hit the back of this, and as you can see, it takes off just a little bitty layer, rounds that over, okay, and makes that look neat. Now what I do is I hit it again with, again, water and saddle soap. This is actually a product called Quick Slick by Barry King. Unnecessary. I just do a lot of it, so I keep that around. I use some 400 grit sandpaper. Sometimes I'll go all the way up to 600 grit. And I will make sure that I'm doing this all in one direction. You can start in 2 directions, but you're going to want to go in one direction. And you want to go in the direction that you can see the nap, the hairs, the collagen fibers laying down. You'll see it. One way they'll kind of stand up a little, and one way they'll lay down. Then I'm just going to grab a piece of canvas. You can use old jeans. You can use an old bed sheet. The one I've used the longest, this is made from an old bed sheet. It's now so old and black that it's crazy, but that's what I use. Some people like to use Tokonol. You definitely can use Tokonol. It's great. I have that and a refillable marker as well. And we'll just put a little bit of that on there and hit it again. You don't need any of this though, guys. Little bit of glycerin soap and water, and hit it and give it a good rub. If you've got good leather, will look great. Okay? So we hit that. And I don't know how well you can see it. Yeah. You can see how shiny that edge gets. Now on this, what I like to do, just for funsies, is I take another one of my refillable markers, get the right one, that has a little bit of dark dye in it, dark brown dye, and I hit the edge of that again, just to sort of even all that up and make it look a little bit darker. That is all preference. You do not need to do that. And I'll show you one other little trick here to finish these off and make these edges look really professional. Or at least as professional as I can do it. So now we've hit that edge. There's that one we just did. You can see how sort of shiny that is, if we can get a focus, yeah. So that, all those fibers are now laid down. But if you want to really seal them off, hit it with a little bit of beeswax. All the way around. Again, going in one direction, okay? All the way around. Come on, focus down. Maybe it'll focus. Maybe it won't. There we go. And then once you've got that beeswax hit around the edges, right? Hit it again vigorously with this another cloth that has wax and dark colors on it, if that's what you're doing. That melts that wax and burnishes it in. And that's now what that edge looks like. See if we can get it to focus one more time. There you go. You can't feel it, of course, but it's very slick now, and it's been impregnated with that that beeswax, and now is just going to be sealed for an extended period of time. Okay? So again, what we would do at this time, were we doing this, and I had a lot more time to hang out with you, is glue this down to the interior on that line that we just made and stitch it in. We're not going to do that right now. So what we're going to do is going to move on to the next step in this process. So let's imagine that we were skipping the part where we stitched along the bottom. We've set our maker's mark. We've done everything that we need to do, and we're ready to set our snaps. Okay? Now, what you're going to need is 4 sockets. I use line 20 sockets. You can use line 24, but they get a little bit big for this particular project. So the smaller snap will do. I use line 24s. I get them from Ohio Travel Bag. I'll put a link to them as well. You're going to need 4 sockets and 4 studs. Okay, so you want the sort of male end, looks like this, little cap, and then you want the female end that fits into. Okay, and then you're going to want the studs to mount these on. And you're going to need, if you want to make it super simple, you're going to need 4 of the smaller posts and 4 of the longer posts. But when in doubt, order the longer posts and feel free to use a file or sandpaper or whatever you need to shorten that down as much as you want. Now, what do I mean by that? What I'm going to show you here is you need to have a post, all right, that fits the leather that you're working with and the piece that you're trying to affix it to. Now, it's difficult for you guys to see, but what you can notice here is this socket is flat on the bottom where the hole is. This snap part is not flat, at least where the post is going to go through. So what you're going to need is a slightly longer post for the male piece and a slightly shorter post for the female piece. It's usually okay to use a longer one, up to reason, but set a couple. You do things, grab a scrap piece of leather, set a couple, and make sure that everything is set up properly, or what you tend up getting is they get set cockeyed and they don't snap well together. So what I've got is, for my Ohio Travel Bag, is what's called the baby post and the long post of line 20 snaps. All right? So, get yours 4 longer posts for males, 4 smaller posts, baby posts, for females, and get ready to mount them. Now, you're going to need the setter that comes with these. So if you order it from Tandy or whatever, it usually comes with something that looks like this, has this sort of little flared piece. Now, I will warn you, these are renowned for being finicky. Finicky is a kind word because they will fight you and make you say bad words. But let's see how I do with a hand set. You want to go sort of slow. You're just taking this post end and putting it on top, right like this. And then you're going to want to, what's going on is it's going to flare out that post and hold it down. So you want to encourage that flare by sort of rocking it around when you get started. And then you're going to strike it firmly and straight down. Don't have it on an angle or you bend that post. And again, sadness occurs. So if you've got good quality snaps and you've taken your time, what you now have is that interior portion rolled over, and we've set that post. So let me show you what that looks like again. We want to keep all these in the same location. So we're going to put this here, grab our setter, put this female version here like this, put it down so you can see what I'm doing, and then tap around it to get it started, and then some firm straight down strikes to drive that home and set it. And we've got it. Now, in the effort of making things quicker, I'm going to grab the setter here and put in the proper dies. Widen this out a little bit. So we're going to grab that, put it over that post here. Then we're going to make sure we have the right setter, which is this one that goes on this piece. All right. We're going to install it in the top. Put this over it, again making sure that we've got everything lined up properly. You guys can see that. And then this setter then just needs a firm press down, and it sets the post. Now, is one better than the other? Well, I think one's more consistent than the other. It's easier to get a more consistent result with the setter. However, unless you're doing a lot of these, don't spend the $200-300 to buy one. Just get the hand setter, get quality snaps, and practice. And you'll be fine. You saw me set 2 pretty easily, and I'm out of practice because I have the machine. Right? We just switched dies, and now we're going to use this snap on the rest of these. So we're going to set this and this with the longer post. And now we have the male and female set in here. All right, so 4 more times. Oddly enough, we're moving pretty fast here. We're doing this one in real time, pretty much. I've prepared some things. We're a half an hour in, and we're probably halfway through this project. And that's with me teaching it to you. So once you get a few of these set up, if you were going to start to sell them, say at a farmer's market or something like that, you know, you get a little production going and you set all the interiors and set all the exteriors, and then pretty soon you're scooting along. All right. I'll take the dies out and put this away, and we're done with that part. So now, what we've got is our top with the snap set. And like I showed you before, now these are going to snap together like that when it's all said and done. All right? So, we've got that all set. Now what we need to do is we need to glue front to back. All right? So what I do is I flip it over. What I normally do, just so that I don't get confused, is put a B for back on things. You would not believe how many times, now you probably don't have this problem, but clearly I do, how many times I've screwed up front to back, left-handed for right-handed. So I like to put a little quick mark on there, and then I don't screw it up as much. I'm primarily a sheath maker, and if I had a nickel for every time I made a right-handed or left-handed sheath when I was supposed to make the opposite, I'd have a lot more money. Alright, so what we're going to use now is Aqualim 315. You can use any type of contact cement or even leather glue. I use contact cement because it's quicker, and I'm doing this, as part of a business. So I want this to stick quickly. If I wanted to stick really quickly, I'd use something like Masters or Barge. This Aqualim is probably the next step, and if you had some time because you're just a hobbyist, just get the Phoebing's leather cement or any other type of leather glue that you can get from your friendly local leather store or online. So I put this in a squeeze bottle. If you're going to order Aqualim and you live in a cold climate, you're going to want to order this while it's warm because this is water-based contact cement. All right? And water-based contact cement is awesome because it doesn't have all the toxic fumes that the toluene-based contact cements do. However, because it's water-based, it freezes. And so if you're getting it shipped to you, it might freeze in the wintertime. Now, some people can put heat packs in and stuff like that. I just buy this by the gallon because I'm, again, business. And I order it in the summertime, and then I don't have to worry about that sort of thing. If that is a worry of yours, go to your local big box store, like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, and get DAP Weldwood. DAP Weldwood is a contact cement that's general purpose, and I used for years successfully. Very similar to Barge and Masters and those types. The only problem that you have with it is you can't buy the thinner. For whatever reason, Weldwood does not sell you a thinner. And because it's toluene based, it wants to flash off quickly. And so when it wants to flash off quickly, it dries so fast that it will dry in the bottle and you end up using like half a quart and wasting the other half. Buy a small bottle if you're a hobbyist and see what your needs are. Find a local cobbler or shoe repair place. Quite often they get in gallons of not only the glue, but the thinner. And if you're nice to them, usually they'll help you order some. That's exactly how I started getting mine. Or you can just ask for their contact. I use a place called ABS Shoe Supply. Talk to Cecil there. And I order it gallons at a time. But I get the thinner is the point. So that when the glue pot that I have starts to gasify and harden some, I can hit it with a little bit of thinner and refresh that some. I get a lot more life out of it. Now, I end up using almost 2 times the amount of thinner than I do glue. Because when I'm doing a big glue up, that pot stays open and those fumes clear out pretty quickly. Now, full warning. If you use toluene based, the Weldwood, Barge, Masters, the non-water based, those fumes are not friendly to your brain. So do it in an open area, crack a window, run a fan, do something to keep your brain cells the same count you started with. All right? So this is water-based. 1 and 2, I don't have a lot of brain cells to worry about killing. They were few and far between to begin with, and I probably finished them off in the Marine Corps and other areas, so I don't have that to worry about. But this is water-based. And what I love about Aqualim is it's incredibly strong. It's just as strong, from what I can see, as the Toluene-based ones. But it has, I won't want to say no odor, but incredibly low odor. It smells a little bit to me like Elmer's glue, like PVA glue. Very mild smell, and you can run it with, you know, I've got a fan on me right now, and it's no problem at all. So we quickly clean that off. We can use water to clean that off. You can use a little silicone spatula, or just use a scrap piece of plastic, like a card or something, and throw it away when you're done. But I use these spatulas. They quite often look like this, if you get them at the big box stores, or like this if you get them online. And I'll try to put a link down below for those as well. And then you just clean them off with water and they last forever. So that's another advantage of the water-based contact cements. Now remember when I said don't cut the base yet, right? The reason for that is now you don't have to be so darn careful when you're lining this up. You just get it in the ballpark, and I marked those exterior lines to make sure that I had glue all the way around. I went around those edges to make sure that I had it, and now I don't need to mess with it. It just all sets down and is all set. Now, if I were doing this real time and I was using water cement, like I just used, water-based cement, right? I would set this aside for half hour, maybe even overnight. Let that fully cure. You can go on and stitch after this, okay? But the needles get all gummed up from the glue that has just not quite dried yet. You want to make this flat. And so what you can get is an embrayer or some other thing, like a little roller here, a small rolling pin, whatever you want to use. I've seen people even use weights that had sort of a round surface and give that a roll, or just took their time and pressed on it. But you're going to want to roll this around and make sure all these edges are laid down. You see me using this thing. This is a little bit of crepe eraser. It's also known as a belt eraser. You can get them at big box stores for helping you clean sandpaper, belt sanders and things. I cut a little chunk off, and then if I get some of the glue on the surface, I'm able to hit this with this, and it rolls it up and gets rid of it, okay? So quite quickly, like that one there and some others, I'm able to get rid of that and clean my project up. Now again, I would let this dry, maybe even overnight. As you can see, there's still glue in the little holes in here, but I prepared for such a thing. I glued this one up, slightly different looking, but same thing, and let this dry. This has been dry for a week now. Slightly different color, black on the back, faded black into sort of a chestnut, but same thing. So now we've got this glued up. What I did also is I trimmed off 3 of the edges, because now we're going to trim off this edge here, okay? Now, one way to do it is to use your X-Acto knife like we did before. If you're going to use an X-Acto knife, go back to your ruler, this cork-based ruler, and set it down and draw it as carefully as you can. The problem is you've already set these snaps down, and so it's not as easy. So you can then trace this line, because remember, only the underside needs to be cut off here, okay? But that can wobble. So if you have one, if you have a single chisel style knife, single bevel, this is called a kiridashi or a skiving knife, that works. Otherwise, just be careful. that single bevel doesn't want to cut into the top layer of your leather and makes a much cleaner cut. Even then, I got just a little bit of that. So now we have all four corners, all four edges cut. Top has been glued down, snaps have been set. But as you can see, some of these corners are round. Well, how do we do that? One way you can do it is to find an edge tool, right? A corner tool. This one's made by Craft Tool by Tandy. I'll probably try to put a link down below as well. And you set this up on its very edge and you tap on it with your mallet or hammer. It goes through, okay? But this is not like a $10 tool to make a single cut. It's not necessary. Let me show you a different way of doing this that you can do. What I do is I collect, this is one of the crazy things you do when you have a business like this. I collect washers. In fact, I have every size washer that my local hardware sells. And I use them as corner templates, all right? I use them as corner templates. And what I could then able to do is take my two-edged blade, my X-Acto knife here, and what I'm going to want to do is just use this as my template. Now you could trace it around like that. I found that's not as efficient. What you can do is just take little slices, little bites, as you round the corner, putting your blade up against the washer. And what you end up with is a perfect circle there. And that little line that you're seeing is not very present from where I can see it, and it will go away in this. So let me show you that again. Grab your washer, get the right size. I couldn't even tell you what size this one is. I probably should do that, so let's do that. That's a 1-inch washer. 1-inch exterior on that. A quarter would be extremely close to this. And will save you a little bit of money. You don't have to buy a fancy, corner tool there. What I also like about this is because you've got a very sharp knife making these cuts, I find it makes a really good edge and prepares us for a successful edge burnishing. So set those over there. So now we are actually almost done here. What we have not done is any stitching yet, and I'll show you some, but I'm not going to belabor that process either, but I'll show you how I do it. If you're going to do it by hand, if I were doing it, I'd go over to my machine and put it underneath 69 or 138 thread, and I would sew these edges. The way I've set this up allows for a left foot walking foot to clear these snaps. That was important to me, but if you're hand stitching like most hobbyists would be doing, you don't have to worry about that. What I just said didn't make any sense. If you've got a machine, I got you covered. So don't worry about that. Now we're going to grab our wing dividers. And we're going to set our wing dividers to about a 1/4 inch. Let's see what I've got here. Let's do 3/16 or a little bit under. What did I do over here? Out there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run this edge around and set our stitch line. Okay? We're going to set our stitch line all the way around. I love wing dividers for this sort of thing. Allows me to quickly and easily set up things like this. So I've got one of these already done. It is set up, all the corners done, everything ready to rock and roll. So now what we're ready to do is do some stitching. Now, this is largely up to what you want this to look like. Okay? What you want this to look like. I've got 69 thread here, but you could always go a little more chunky. You could go to 138 thread, 0.6 thread, 0.8 thread if you're doing that with hand stitching. You can even go all the way up to 1.0 thread, something even as fat as this. It's especially the case to go to these fatter threads when you really want the thread to look like a showcase. If you really want to have a, if you had some red dice and you had a black dice tray, right? And you wanted to make sure that your black dice tray had some red in it for your red dice, then put a big fat 1 mil stitch in there. If you're doing 1 mil stitch, I would do a 4mm stitching iron. I'm going to be doing 1/38 thread to show you guys tonight. And I will be using 3mm stitching irons. Either way would have worked just fine. So what we need to start our stitching here is 2 John James needles. I'm using 1.00s. 0.4 would work just fine. If you're going to a fatter thread, you can use a 3/0 or a 2/0 John James needle. Just get a high quality needle that fits the thread easily, not crazy easily, but easily enough through the needle eyes. Okay? Then, if you're using sewing machine thread like I am, real floppy stuff, run it through your beeswax. Put your thumb on it, pull it through the beeswax, and that will put a little bit of wax on the surface, and that's going to aid you in a couple of ways when you stitch. One, it makes things a little bit smoother when you're stitching through. And then when that wax dries or cools, it holds your stitches where they are. Okay? So that's a good thing. However, you're only going to want one length of thread that is as long as your arms are. So I'm 6'5", so I can pull a hank of thread that is about 6 foot long. You don't want it any longer than that, or it's unmanageable. It gets tied on everything. So this will take longer than 6 feet to go around. It's okay. Just do it. And I'll show you how to marry these up as we go. So, again, I'm not going to belabor this, but let's start about here. What do I want to do? 1/38. I don't want to do 4 mil or 3 mil. I'll do 3. It'll look a little more refined to my eye. So what we're doing is we're using a set of stitching irons. You can use almost any type. This is a set of 3 mil stitching irons, as you can see here. And what that means is that there's 3 millimeters between the tine points. All right, which is about 1/8 of an inch, something like that. So set that up, and then you make a punch. You want that to go all the way through, and you want that to be straight up and down and on your line. Okay? Then you put the prong of the previous run in the last hole to keep it straight and all good to go. And you move along. Now, I've been doing this for a while, so I keep that pretty straight up and down pretty easily. You may need to do some practice, and that's just fine. Okay? So, we're going to stamp these along. I'm using a Poundo mat below this. You can just use another piece of leather. Do not use something that is hard. Every time it goes through, it will bend those tines. So the stone, you want something on top of that. If it's wood, you don't want that wood to be too hard. My advice would be a layer of leather and something soft underneath it like wood, and you're going to be good to go. Okay? So we're going to chase these around. Normally, of course, I would go all the way around on this, but I'm not going to for this video, because once you see it, it's just a lot of rinse and repeat. Okay? So, we've set one line of our stitches. We're now getting into this corner. So I was using a 5-prong stitching iron. Okay? We're going to switch to our 2-prong, and we're just going to move these along to get this corner set one hole at a time. All right, just making sure that we're setting our stitching prongs on that one hole. until you get all the way around, like I'm just about to. Then go back to your 5-prong, and you have that all set. Okay? So that's what we've got there. Now, what we're going to go to next is a stitching pony. It'd be nice to have one of these, but you don't need one. You can kind of hold it down and force your way through it. Let me adjust this. You can see all this stitching pony is really just an extra set of hands that holds onto it. So some people just use clamps. They'll use a clamp to hold on to it, and then they'll clamp the clamp to the table. There's a lot of other ways of doing this that's not expensive. Some people just let it flop around sort of in their lap, and that's all right too. So I'm going to set this up. Normally I set it a little bit lower, but so that you guys can see it, I'll bring you in a little bit closer. Now what we're going to do is we're going to thread our needles. You would think that that would be a simple thing. It is, but there is something different in doing leather work. You're going to use 2 needles. Okay? So you're going to thread 1 needle on one side, and then you're going to pierce back through that thread and pull that pierce out the other side to hold it on. You can pierce it twice if you need to, especially if your thread is quite malleable. You may want to pierce that twice. So let me adjust this down, show you what I mean. Grab this 1/38 thread, this number 4 needle, thread it through. John James are what I recommend for needles because they're just very high quality. And pierce this thread. And then you're going to be good to go. We're going to start at about halfway here to get started. And then we're going to pull that line through until the needles match up. You want these to be equidistant when you start. All right? You want these to be equidistant. Now, you're going to have to practice this and see what combination of hand stitching works best for you. What looks the nicest? I'm going to tell you what I do on this particular stitch. 1, I've got the slanted holes facing up towards me. All right, so there's on a slant, and that slant is facing up and towards my head. I'm going to insert the left needle first, and I'm going to capture that needle on top of it with the second needle in a cross. All right, I'm going to reinsert the second needle behind the thread, and then overlap that thread on this side. They call that an overcast. I'll show you this about a million more times. Left needle through, capture it on top with the right needle. Okay. Inserting this behind the thread, same hole, and then overcasting here. And for me, that gives me a front that looks good and a back that looks pretty darn good. Not perfect. Sometimes you can get them perfect. This is about as good as it can get for me. And then it's really a bunch of rinse and repeat to go all the way around this. Okay? So again, left needle through, right needle captures it on top. You guide that thread through, pull the thread out of the way, insert in the same hole, overcast. Now, when you insert that right-handed needle, make sure that it is not piercing the thread that's already in that hole. And how you can do that is to move the left thread that you just put in just a little bit. If it moves freely, you're good to go. If it's stuck, back that right needle out, start again. You will pierce your thread more than once in this project, and you'll get frustrated. Just unthread the needle, pull it back apart, and start again. After a while, you'll get fast at this. All right? Now I'm just going to go a couple of inches along here and show you what sort of mine looks like. I'll also show you how to end a stitch. and marry up a stitch when you eventually run out of thread, and you will run out of thread in this project because it's quite a bit of stitching. It's about 4 feet, linear feet of stitching, a little under. But 4 linear feet does not mean 4 feet of thread. It's going back and forth through here. Okay? You're going to stitch yours on. I'll do about 5 more. Let me just do those quickly. Left hand through, right hand grabs it in a cross pattern, inserts it behind the thread of the first needle with an overcast on the left. So slow. Left hand through. Right hand grabs it, insert behind, overcast, and pull tight. Now, how tight? Don't reef on this. Just snug it up. Just snug it up. All will be well. All right, we've got about 1.5 inches here, and that gives you the idea of what we were going to do, okay? Now, when we get to the end, let's assume that we've gotten to the end now. All right, let me show you what I've got so far. Let me wipe off some of this wax. Show you what I've got so far. In fact, let me use my hammer here. Tap that down. And that allows you to see the stitch that I've got going so far. Here's the stitch on the outside. Probably a little easy to see. So you can see that that is following along a nice little straight line, and every stitch has a nice angle to it. Okay? Now again, let's assume that we've gotten to the end. Or we've just run out of thread and we need to start again. What we're going to do is a double back stitch, trim these off, burn them, and move on. It's really simple. Okay? I do, because there's an inside and an outside of this, a top that you see more and a back that you see less, I don't do a double back stitch. I do a back stitch and a half. Okay, so remember we were inserting left needle first. On back stitches, in order to make this look right, we're going to insert right needle first. Before we grabbed it on top and across, we're going to grab it on the bottom. We're going to insert it and no overcast. Essentially doing the opposite of what we did to get here. Snug that up. I'll show you that again. Right needle through, left needle on bottom, no overcast, snug up. So now we have a double back stitch. This would be fine to trim off here and then burn off the ends if yours is a man-made material. I do one more half stitch, inserting the left hand needle through to hide the termination of that thread on the back side. So let's see what we got. Let me move this back. Okay. Take my thread nippers. You can use a sharp X-Acto like we've been using. Take my lighter here and just hit those frayed ends. Get those to knock down. The other thing that I like about that is it tends to burn off just a little bit of the wax from hand stitching. Let me turn the light off on my camera and see if I can show you guys what we have. Yeah. Move that light away from it too. You can see the angles on those stitches. And then you can see this couple of back stitches here, but they lay over top of the other ones and they look nice. So if you then had that going, right? If you had that going and you needed to keep going, you just start up here again and keep going around. If that were the end, then it's the end. You double back stitch and you finish this off. So let's assume now that we have this stitched all the way around. What do we do next? We sand down these edges, whether on a sander or using our sandpaper, and we do our edging process that I showed you earlier in this video. We hit it with sandpaper, we hit it with a little bit of water and glycerin soap or saddle soap. If you do get saddle soap, get the white saddle soap. Burnish this up until it's at a high gloss, and then hit it with your dye if you want to do that. and a little bit of beeswax. I put beeswax on this, so we're just gonna hit the side of this, seeing that we've stitched this all the way around, and show you the finished product. So this is what you'll have after the pattern pack is complete, or you'll have one of these with a stitch in the centerpiece sitting in the middle. Either way is that way. Again, feel free to be completely creative with tooling on this, dyeing, whatever you want to do, make it yours. Again, if it's a dice tray, be careful of too many dents in the leather for the rolling surface, because D20s, especially D100s, tend to just get a little bit squirrely when they're not a flat surface. You end up with cocked dies and having to re-roll them, and that's just a pain in the butt. Some of us struggle to roll anything but ones anyway, so we'll see what we finish off with on this. So you should have this done now. I hope that this all made sense to you. I hope it works well for you. Check out DiomedesIndustries.com, anywhere that you bought this, and good luck to you. Be good to each other.